So I was so excited this morning to get in and get this boat sanded that I forgot to get any footage of the fresh high build. So what you're seeing here is after sanding and cleanup. This has been sanded with 220 grit by hand and machine, and it's pretty light and simple sanding just to smooth the surface. But the primer came out great. The sanding was pretty quick. It's a lot of sanding in any boat project, and this painting, the painting process takes a lot of different sandings, but at least with the spray application, it's just after each round of primer and not after every coat. So I've cleaned the hull with a vacuum and solvent, and I've rinsed off the floor a little bit to settle the dust. And my final preparation step will be one more solvent wash with the fancy solvent. I always do the two because the first round with regular paint thinner gets the bulk of the dust off, and then I can do a good clean with the last one. I know I'm not leaving any residue. All prep complete. My final step was a final solvent wash with the proprietary wipe down solvent. Still drying a little bit here, you can see a little bit. Hull's going to get white primer above the gunnel and gray primer below the gunnel, because there's going to be a dark hull color. So 2 stages of primer that I'll do in the same day. First the white, then the gray. With the gunnel to demark it, there might be a little bit of overspray from the gray, but that's not going to hurt anything. So we'll get all this primer done in a day and sand everything one more time, and we're ready for top coats. So boat looks great. It's nice to see it out of raw wood and epoxy for the first time, and I'm looking forward to moving on from here. So I almost forgot again to get some video of this before I start work on it, but here we are. Here's what it looks like after an overnight cure time. Fully primed above and below. Came out pretty well. Remarkably little overspray on the white from the gray, but that's absolutely no problem because that'll just get sanded right off. And we'll be right down back to white again. My next task is to sand this all with 320 grit, and that'll make it ready for top coat. I think the primer came out great. I don't see any issues. But anyway, this came out well. I'm going to get to work sanding, and then I can move on with the gloss white paint up on the deck areas. A little bit later, and here we are, sanded with 320, and now this has been vacuumed and solvent washed, and everything's basically clean, smooth, and ready for top coats. It's a little bit of prep ahead. Got a little masking to do on the deck, mask for non-skid, and I'll have to cover the hull, and I'm also going to mask for the boot top because the boot top's going to be sprayed at the same time as the deck. So it's too early to mask over this fresh primer, so that'll have to wait for another day. But the hard work is done here. Sanding is done, which pleases me to no end. So we'll give this some more cure time and get going with the final masking and the final steps in the painting process. Won't be long now. Here at the bow, I let it widen out until it came right to the very top of the external chine. That serves two purposes. One, I wanted to make sure the chine was all in the boot top and not the hull paint. And also a natural shearing or widening of the boot top is usually necessary in the bow because of the flare. If you don't let it widen a little bit, it looks like it gets too narrow, even if it's perfectly horizontal. It's a little visual effect that if you don't do it, looks funny. If you do it, you don't notice that it's wider, but you notice that it looks right. So that's what I've attempted to do here. I held the tape to the tick marks until this point here, which is roughly in the area of the forward port. And then from there, I let it climb. I basically stretched the tape from that point up to the chine and let it claim that line on its own. So you can see in a few places, like here where the bottom actually meets into the top of the chine, I'm actually about an inch above that line. And it's basically the same on both sides. And it's not a widening that you're really going to notice. But I think terminating that right at the top of the chine is totally the right choice on this boat, the way this has worked out. And this is a 2-inch visual stripe. And back aft, I basically used a ruler to measure 2 inches vertically up from the bottom. So I held the ruler out at a little bit of an angle. And more importantly, it's basically the same on both sides. So you can see here again, here's another tick mark right about at the point where the bottom paint's going to die out into the chine. And again, I'm about an inch above that here. And then back here at the forward port, I'm on my tick mark, wherever it is. Here at the stem, where those 2 pieces of tape die out, right where the chine meets the stem. And then I just connect it across the forward edge of the stem with another piece of tape, straight across. And that'll continue that line right across the forward edge. Here at the transom, I had the 2 side corners for reference points. And in the center line where I have this extra support and it's relatively flat, I measured up 2 inches, made a couple marks there. There's one here on each side of that. So with those 4 points, I basically eyeballed the tape across. And then at the edges here, it has to manipulate around the edge of this reinforcement piece. And I've just eyeballed that so that it looks straight from the side. And it all works out with where these other tape lines come in. So I think that's pretty good. Over here on the port side, it's the same thing. So everything below this line is going to be white. It's a roughly 2-inch, well, it's a 2-inch visual height boot top. And I'll mask off above that and to the gunnel here. And then everything above that and below that line can be painted white in one painting operation. My next step after masking the boot top off was to cover the whole hull with paper between the gunnel and the top edge of the boot top. So that's all complete now. Pretty tired of working down at this low height where the boot top is and stuff. Doing the hull would have been nicer with the boat raised up or on a trailer. More comfortable working height, but this is where it is, and this is a good height for getting the decks done. So it's a compromise, but ready to spray the boot top. And my next task is to mask off the deck for the gloss white. I'm going to do non-skid on the field of these deck areas. Don't plan on walking on them much, but it doesn't seem right to do it any other way. It would look funny all glossy white. It'd be a glary nightmare. I just don't like that look. So we're going to non-skid that. And I've got this outboard well area covered up so it doesn't get overspray. That's going to get hull color later. It's a lot of masking that probably isn't necessary, but again, I don't want paint where I don't want it. I'd rather do this. So next I'm going to mask off these decks. So I've got an 1.5-inch border on both sides of this, leading aft. It's 1.5 inches from the inside edge of this tape, because this is the mahogany piece here. And up here where they meet, just shy of the forward edge of the slot, I've used my 1.5-inch wide ruler and marked, this is 1.5 inches, this line. That's the dimension there. And that's where I'm going to create my termination. I don't like to bring these out to a point or anything like that. It gets too funny narrow if I was going to bring it out to here. I don't really like to do that. So what I'm going to do here instead is keep that 1.5 inch theme going, and I'll cut it here and here at a radius, and that'll be the end of that border. And that's what we got at the end. Nice little curved thing. It's got a little flat in the middle, and it just is all consistent with the widths on either side. Here at the aft end, it's just 1.5 inches on all the borders, rounded at the 2 corners, and 1.5 inches all the way along the birdwatcher rail there. And then I'll fill this field with paper so that it doesn't get overspray. And here along the edge, it's 1.5 inches out. I've just faired it by eye with a few marks, and we're ready to do the same thing on the other side. So here we are, all masked up for the white gloss paint, which will go everywhere above the gunnel, as you can see, and then a 2-inch stripe down near the waterline, the boot top. I've got 3 non-skid field areas masked off on the decks. This will later get a contrasting non-skid, just like the inside of the boat. Got 1.5 inch border all the way around, and all of this slot combing area will get sprayed as well. And of course the upper part of the hull here. This masking took 2 hours all told, complicated only by the need to work down at floor level quite a bit to get this boot top masked and the hull masked off. Once I moved up from there, it was very quick. That was most of the work. Masking off these deck areas might have taken half an hour total. Here I've masked straight across between the tops of the gunnels, and that'll be white above that line, and eventually when we do the hull color, it'll be everything below that line. So the last step is one more cleanup, one more round of solvent wash with the proprietary solvent, and this will be ready to paint. You really can't have enough light when doing top coat because it's so hard to see where you've been. And real paint shops have those nice vertical rows of lights on the walls. And on the other side of my shop, I have some lights along the walls that help. But over the years, I've found that I need more. So I've got all these LEDs that I've got set up aiming at the boat in strategic locations. And this is just to help me avoid shadows and make it easier for me to see where I've been painting, because it can be very tough sometimes. So I've got 6 of these bright LEDs and 3 other bright CFL lights, just standard work lights. But these are daylight bulbs that help me see as well as possible. So I've just set these all up around the boat. I'll be very glad for these when I get painting. I'll wear my headlamp too. But with those in place, it's time to do the final solvent wash, and then all the prep will be done. All prep complete. I'm ready for paint tomorrow morning. Get this white painted. Pretty simple bit of white to get done, but it's top coat and it matters the most. But I think we're ready. So we'll just let it warm up overnight, and bright and early tomorrow I'll come in and spray this white. So it's the next day, about 24 hours after I finished painting this, and I'm getting my first good look at this since I finished. It looks pretty good. Pretty happy with it overall. It's always nice to get this final paint on here. This gloss paint is just something to behold. So this completes the decks and upper hull, and also the boot top. And my task now is to unmask what I can. It's too soon to tape over anything, so I've got to, this is kind of a lay day, so I'll do what I can to get ready for painting the rest of the hull, which is the final step of this painting odyssey. And that's what I'm going to be spending part of the morning here doing. But I'm happy with what I see. I should be able to untape everything on deck. I've been debating how much untaping to do, but I like to get the tape off when I can. And I'm going to have to cover the entire deck down to the gunnel with plastic. So there's really no reason to keep any of this stuff in place. But it looks good. I'm pleased. And it's a nice day outside. I should be able to open things up a little bit, which will be nice. Because why should I tell you? So let's get to work and start getting this as ready as we can for the hull paint. Places like this can be especially trying and time consuming to get the tape off. Now this tape's been on here the duration, so it's got two kinds of primer plus the top coat on top of it. And where the challenge really comes in situations like this, the tape pulls up fine, but this tape is an inch wide, wraps over this 3/4 inch wide rail. So we've got this little bit on the outside, and it's all heavily coated in paint. So it's very tough to get the tape to pull cleanly when you've got this edge wrapped over. But this is just one of those things that happens. It gets lots of paint on it, and you've got to be careful because you don't want to rip the paint up off the edge, especially when it's fresh. The more this cures, the less that's a problem, but it's only 24 hours. So this is the trying part, because every time I try to pull this, it tends to rip because of this corner that's wrapped over just a little bit. So we just pick away at it and it gets done. It's only 10 or so feet on this side plus the other side, but this is, it's not difficult, it's just frustrating and time consuming. This is the fun part. I'll get the rest of that without a handheld camera. So I've got this all untaped as much as I can for now. The rest is going to wait until the hull is done. I think this looks pretty good. But everything from the gunnel up is now complete as far as paint goes. And that's very nice. Very happy with that. It's starting to come together. We'll look at some of the details, but first a quick overview all the way around. Here on deck, I'd actually had wanted to paint that little plywood edge, the deck edge, but I wasn't happy with how the paper was taped, left a gap there. It was going to overspray It was a place to catch dust, so I ended up taping that onto the paper from above back when I installed that. So I'm gonna just mill a piece of simple trim to go across there and cover that. Probably be pine. So that'll get finished at some point. I'll probably do a trim piece here at the edge of the bulkhead. This is painted, but it'll probably look good with some trim, but I'm not worrying about that right now. But you can see the border that I have, the glossy border, follows the deck edge right up to the whatever we're calling this, deck trim. Up around the birdwatcher combings there. A little foredeck area. And then the anchor well top where I put in this little fillet. So that's all pretty well finished off. And then the view from inside. One thing I found I'm constantly battling as I walk around is this roughly 12-inch step here into the companionway. I'm constantly tripping over that. You can see my toe marks here where I kicked it as I try to walk over. So it is what it is, but I had to come up with a way so that I don't trip over that every 2 seconds, because it's a tall step, and it's taller than your foot seems to think it is for whatever reason. So the boat's not perfect, the paint's not perfect, but looks pretty good. Certainly happy with it. And as all the details come together, it's going to look better and better. To mask for the hull paint, my first step here at the boot top is this 1/2-inch piece of vinyl fine line tape. This tape resists the solvents in the paint that I use, and I use this to help have a nice crisp line right at the edge. So I'll put this on all the way along, and then I'm actually going to cover it with the green tape as much as possible, and I'll cover the rest of the boot top as well. For the rest of the boot top taping, I went by with 2 rolls of tape at a time. This is 1.5-inch tape. That way I can cover the whole thing in just one round around the boat rather than having to crawl around the boat at least 2 times. So the boot top's all covered up with that layer of vinyl fine line tape at the top, and then 2 layers of 1.5-inch or 2 widths to cover the entire thing. A little tricky taping this area here where it transitions into the chine, but it's done. And the tape's all firmly pressed in place, especially here at the stem, in this transition from the flat chine onto the vertical hull. And then also back at the transom corners, where this has to kind of bend around the corner of this board and underneath. It's these corners right here that I'm worried about. And if a little paint gets in there, I'll fix it. This one, they keep opening up because it's such a tight corner. So I'll just keep pressing it down. Next, I'm going to plastic the top all the way down to the gunnel and back here to the edges of the outboard well. So the boat's all taped up and ready for the hull paint. Got the decks all covered. Had a bit of a plastic snafu. I had a roll of 8 foot wide for this job, but I didn't account for going over the top and down to the gunnel, so it wasn't wide enough. Fortunately, I had a roll of 12 foot, but it wasn't long enough. So the 12 foot ran out right here. And then I used a piece of the other to cover the rest, and I overlapped it by a substantial margin. It's all very securely taped at the gunnel. Always go overkill on taping when it's something like this, because I do not want any overspray getting through. So I go kind of crazy on the taping. Anyway, this is taped up, and my final step is one more solvent wash with the fancy solvent. It's about noon. I've just spent a couple hours getting this all ready, taped up and cleaned and so forth, and I'm ready to get this sprayed today. It's the next morning and taking a first look at this boat after the paint. Oops, sorry. Looks pretty good. Looking forward to getting this unmasked, get a view of the whole thing. Generally happy with what I see. So let's get this thing untaped if we can. Of course, as soon as I start the camera, it tears. So I've spent part of the day today pulling all the tape and everything off the boat. Mostly went very well. Well, it all went fine. It just took a little bit of time on the tops of these gunnels. Just the nature of the beast. There was a lot of paint on there. And I've got to paint the bottom below the boot top there. But this is where we are with all the paint complete. Happy with everything. Definitely like that I kept the inside of the outboard well area hull color. That just looks right to me. So I'm glad I went that route. And I'm happy with how everything looks. I'm happy with how my waterline and boot top look. Use my voice. And yeah, it's exciting to see this all painted and shiny and defined. Finally see the whole, what the boat is supposed to look like. And I love it. I think it looks really cool. And looking forward to finishing up the rest from here. Final touch for the exterior of the hull was to finish up the bottom paint. The bottom part of the boat was painted before I turned it over, but the side area that I masked off before starting the hull is what I finished off just now. You know, it looks a little odd the way it goes around that external chine, but from the right angle it's a straight line, which is what it wants to be. Same thing from the side, from eye level. It's a straight line. So I think this looks great, and we're going to move on now to the other parts of the build.